Welcome to the series of Get an A with Less Stress. My name is Jonathan Helmke. I'm a librarian here at SFA, RWC Library. This is about how to read scholarly articles in a way that's efficient in terms of getting an A with less stress. A lot of assignments you may encounter, especially in English class that you're in right now, is that you're maybe looking for scholarly articles. And so the scholarly articles can be sometimes daunting. A lot of times they're 20, 30 pages, and it's a lot of maybe technical terms, a lot of math. So there might be some trepidation, um, almost like stressful time to read those articles. So I'm going to give you some tips to how to read those very efficiently. And so that's what we're going to look today. You're looking at a little chart here that'll help you with that efficiency. So you can get an A with less stress. So we're going to go through this little chart here real quick. And then we're going to look at an actual article and kind of identify those areas. That way you're more efficient when you read these scholarly articles and when you look through them. So I'm just going to blow this up here so you can see a little better. The first thing is, what kind of article do you have? And this is why you want to look at, does it have an experiment or is it without an experiment? Because if it has an experiment, you kind of look at it a little differently than without an experiment. So basically, you try to figure out if an article has an experiment. What you look for is the method section. In the article we're going to look for that method section there. And usually the method section is where the authors describe how they design and execute the experiment. Now, without an experiment, you may go through a different area. Okay, so that's the first thing you look for. Does my article have an experiment when you look for a method section, or without an experiment? Number two, where do I start? Here is where we go into the next section, is we call the sandwich method. And I'm going to here talk about the sandwich method. That means that if you think of this way, you have the top piece of bread is your top sandwich, part of your sandwich, the top piece of bread. Then you have your meat that goes, or parm jelly, some meat that goes inside the sandwich, and then you have the bottom piece. With the sandwich method is the abstract is we call the top bread piece. So the sandwich method is the abstract. Remember that's a summary of the article. Then if you skip the meat or the peanut butter or jelly and go to the bottom piece of the bread, that's your sandwich, part of your bottom piece sandwich, that's your conclusion or discussion. This is where you learn about the actual findings of the article. This is where you save time, because about 90% of the information you're going to use for your paper is going to come from the abstract, and also it's going to come from the discussion conclusion. The top piece and then the bottom piece. The meat is the methods. It could be the results. And that's not really as important because you can go back to that if needed. But this is going to save you a lot of time if you use the sandwich method. That means the top bread, abstract, bottom piece, discussion or conclusion. When we look at an actual article, we'll look at that. Okay, number three. Is it okay if I'm confused? That means a lot of technical terms. Maybe they're using some stats. You looked at the abstract. You look at the discussion conclusion. Absolutely. There's a lot of knowledge that authors have before they write the article. So a lot of times I Google or I use Credo. We have that on our library website to learn more about the background of the article. That's going to save you a lot of time so you can understand what are they talking about. So I Google maybe a term they're using and so forth. So that gives you less stress there too if you can pull some terms that you think, okay, I'm not too familiar with. Number 4, should I be doing something while I read the article? My suggestion is when you read the app, do the sandwich method. When you read the abstract first, and when you jump down to the conclusion, is that you take notes of what are the main ideas. Do not highlight every single sentence or write down every sentence. What you're going to do is highlight usually what are the main ideas in the abstract and what's the main idea in discussion or conclusion. That means what are the main ideas, what are the bigger themes, and some concepts. Also, another tip is that when you write in your own words, then you don't get into the plagiarism issue. That way you can, the reader or your teacher will know that you kind of digested the article and have a basic understanding of the article. That way you have it in your own words. And then that way when you start writing, you can plug that into that too. So just to review is what kind of article do I have? That means with an experiment, without an experiment. Where do I start? Remember, use the sandwich method. You have your abstract, and then you jump to the discussion or conclusion. And then if you're confused, then I would Google a few terms, maybe find a Wikipedia article, use Cradle, that's one of our databases, to find information about that. While I'm reading, I kind of take some notes in my own words, some main ideas. The last thing is read all your articles. And by that, what I mean by that is that just don't choose one article. You'll have to choose 1 or 2 articles to start with and maybe add a few more. That way you can take evidence from and themes from each article and kind of stitch them together to write your paper. Next, we're going to look at here, I'm going to close this, minimize this window here. And then remember is that we're going to review, this is another chart you can use that we looked at before, a little different way. So just review your scholarly article. Remember, it's with the study or without a study. And there might be some different terms what you do. On the right-hand side here is an article I found about, I'm doing a topic of children's screen time. And I'm looking at the family social economic status. That means, do they have education, economic ways, income ways to economically, are they well off? Do they have some money? And so basically looking at those 2 things. So what we're going to do is, first thing is we're going to identify, remember our step 1 is, do they have a method section? That means, is it with a study or without a study? So if I look at the article here, I scroll down. If you notice, they have an introduction. They have a method section. So that means that usually when there's a method section, that's with a study. Now, if it didn't have a method section, you would skip, for example, the methods area and the results, and then the discussion. So if you notice here, it's a little without a study. If there was no method section, you would kind of do a little differently. So now it's with the study. Okay, remember the sandwich method is next. What I do is I read the abstract. Remember, that's our top bread. It's the best place to start. It summarizes the article, it includes the results of the experiment, and it gives you the question, what are the authors trying to do? In this one here they're looking at, for example, the objective, that's the question they're trying to answer, is this examine whether higher socioeconomic status children's digital technology used to adhere to contemporary patriotic guidelines how it compared to lower SES children, means lower socioeconomic children, and why the higher SES, that's a socioeconomic status, far exceeded pediatric recommendations. So that's what they're looking at in the abstract. That way, when I start to write my paper, I can look at that. And also, they gave you the results already. So that's why the abstract is really important to use first as your top piece of the bread, the sandwich method. Remember your keywords. Provide many idea topics covered in the article. That will come from the abstract. So what are the keywords they're looking at? They're looking at socioeconomic status. They're looking at technology use. They're looking at the pediatrics guidelines. So those are kind of keywords. Okay, the introduction to the next section there. This is less helpful. Remember the sandwich method? We skip this section because usually it just gives you more background and history. So that's why I skip that until later on when I use the sandwich method. The methods I skip and the results I skip, and then I go down to the discussion section. So if you scroll down, many articles use this type of organization. So if you scroll down, you get results. There should be a section here, and we'll just keep going down here. Is you have then discussion. Remember, that's your bottom piece of the bread. Your introduction, your methods, your results, that's your meat. Discussion's the bottom bread. So remember, you read the top bread, the abstract, and then you read the bottom bread, piece of the sandwich, discussion. This is another great place to start. This describes the results. And that's where you really get a lot of good information of what's the results and what does it mean. And then that way you can use that in your paper to support your thesis. And so basically the discussion here is they looked at different ways of SES, remember that's the social economic, and they looked at parenting and people and the children's technology use. And so that's what discussion is. Then, if you really need more information, then you can go back to, like you see, you get about 90% information from those two sections. So if you use the sandwich method. The rest is your, we call method. So you can skim that, the methods, but your qualitative data, and then your analysis, that's your results. That might information, but still the discussion is much better to use first. But you can skim this middle part, the meat part. That's including the results. That has the charts and graphs, the maps. That way you can then skim through that and pick up pieces of information that might help you. But you can get 90% from the abstract and also the discussion, the sandwich method, and then top bread, bottom bread. And then you can pick up some other tidbits from the meat. That's the introduction, methods, and results. If you have any questions about using the sandwich method or looking at scholarly articles and need some help, always ask a librarian through the library's website. We can help you out and digest those articles so you can get the information to get an A with less stress. One last thing is the references. Usually they'll have references at the end in the scholarly article. The references are another good way to find other sources. So a lot of times they will pick up other sources they used in their paper. That's very similar. So that's another way to get some other sources. So I just want to mention that. So in review, get an A with less stress by using this method to read a scholarly article using the sandwich method. That means the abstract, and jump to discussion, and then